Hi, I'm Amanda,
And I'm Cara.
and welcome to the Historical Society podcast. Thank you for joining us today. So, today we decided to do an episode originally that we weren't planning on doing. We were hoping to either go into more episodes about the pathways of healing, or we were going to go back into history. But given the last week's current events, we just decided that we should talk about that. So, and before so obviously, we're talking about the last week's events because it's the first week of the Trump administration, and a lot has happened during that week. But before we got into that, we also kind of just wanted to reflect on our world just over the last several years, last 5 years. And we want to talk about all that's been happening there in the last 5 years as well. We had the pandemic. It was very stressful. A lot of terrible things happened. Then we had the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. We had the invasion of Ukraine, the terrorist attack on Israel on October 7th, the complete destruction of Gaza, many natural disasters like the current LA wildfire situation, the re-election of Donald Trump, warfare and famine in Africa, and the quick emergence of artificial intelligence. And it seems like the guardrails have been taken off recently and the concerns that go with that. So it's a lot. It's a lot that we've been through just in 5 years. And then in some ways, this past week feels like 5 years. You know what I mean?
In what way? Just because
Just
it's
like
so
so much has
stressful?
happened. Yeah, so much has happened and it's been stressful. And so we thought we would sort of talk about stress management during this time, just because how much has been happening in the last 5 years, but also how much has happened in this past week. And we all obviously face stressful situations just in our day to day lives. Stressful job, stressful health issue, a relationship issue, a financial issue, because things can be hard. And we wanted to go over some ideas for just kind of managing stress in general. And then we'll talk a little bit specifically about things that have happened this past week, starting this Trump era. So I was going to kind of go first in my reaction to this past week.
Fine with me.
Fine by you?
Yeah, I'm in a bad mood.
No. Kara has also had a bad week.
Yeah.
So Kara gets to express that after I express mine. Yes.
It's none of your business.
It's none of your business. Interesting. Okay, well, I'm going to go first.
Okay, you go first.
Okay. So I'm going to focus on the Trump stuff because I just wanted to say I basically somehow kind of forgot what it was like to have that daily deluge of constantly bad news. I didn't remember that part. I don't know how I didn't remember it. But I also didn't remember how I needed to think about my social media consumption and my news consumption. Those were things that I had basically forgotten. And even though, he had been saying that he was going to do a bunch of stuff on the first day, I don't know. I think I was hoping for incompetence, perhaps. Anyway, so I would say overall, this first week feels worse than the last first week in 2016, 2017, I guess it would have been. Because I'm left feeling like they're more prepared this time. And, we talked about this on our Women in Politics episode that Project 2025 was obviously always connected to Donald Trump. And we're seeing a lot of those ideas start to happen, basically. A lot of the ideas are in those executive orders. Things like the immigration stuff. Well, I'll get to those in a second. So, so we knew it was going to be bad, but I kind of forgot about just the velocity of bad things happening. And so some of the executive orders that we've seen things that, dismiss or pretend like climate change or climate crisis isn't happening. We've seen the silencing of the CDC, the NIH, and the delaying of grant decisions for important research like cancer research. Also the bird flu situation. Um, we had the elimination of the 1965 Lyndon B. Johnson Civil Rights Executive Order, which ordered the federal government to make sure that there was no discrimination along all the lines, like, gender, religion, race, all of those things that are important. Then we saw the refusing to give passports to anyone not selecting female or male. We saw the declaration of there only being two genders. We are also beginning to see the deportation of immigrants. And, we haven't seen this yet on TV that I know of, but, I'm assuming we're going to see some really terrible things while families are being ripped apart. We have seen the elimination of all DEI programs at the federal level and a push to pressure corporations and
Whoa.
organizations to.
He already tried to eliminate birthright citizenship, didn't
Yep,
he?
that's another one. He wanted to eliminate birthright
That was
citizenship, even
very
though.
quickly ruled unconstitutionally
Right,
sound.
right. So that's a federal judge. I want to say it was a federal judge from Washington State. I think it could be a different state.
I think that's right.
That will probably go to the Supreme Court, and who knows with the conservative majority. I mean, it should be quite clear because it's in the Constitution. But let's see what else we got. He also removed the security detail from people who were actually in his cabinet who have targets on them by Iran. So like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, and then of course Dr. Fauci. He's removed all their security detail because he's a petty, petty man. Childish, but now this is cruel and also dangerous. And then, of course, we have the pardons that he pardoned the 1,500 plus insurrectionists who destroyed property, who attacked police officers, who tried to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. And all of them are free, even the people who use flagpoles and tasers and bats and beat police officers.
Although at least two of them have said that they reject the pardons.
Two. I only saw one.
Was there a woman and a man, from what I read? Yeah, they were saying he's trying to rewrite history, and
Right.
it's just not true.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, he
It
calls them
happened and
hostages.
Yeah, they said they committed violence, they were in the wrong, they broke the law, so they deserve what they got. That's what these two people said.
Right. It's like living in the upside down world, living in a world where what is true is seen as false. It's just epic gaslighting.
Yeah, exactly. It's infuriating.
Yeah. So, I think the thing that is, I mean, I don't remember this word, I don't think I said this word necessarily during the first presidency, and I don't know if it's because there were a bunch of buffers around him, but I just see like a cruelty
Yeah.
on display, and that is something I don't remember from the first presidency.
I
I
know.
mean, we saw kids in cages, so that was cruel. So maybe it was always there, but I don't know if it's just because it kind of caught me off guard this time. But anyway, so this past week was hard. I felt a lot of different things. Obviously, you feel the anger, you feel the anxiety, but I had like the real grief, just flat out grief. And my faith journey has been complicated for many reasons, but
Yeah.
when I go and pray, usually something bad is happening. So, yeah, I basically just like sobbed for a while because I feel like I was grieving the country that we could have had, the country that we should be, and also the just the how we're treating one another. How people who are in our country, there's another way of dealing with illegal immigration that we're not doing that. We're not dealing with people as fellow human beings. We're treating them like animals. We're talking about each other like we're animals. And this is stemming from Donald Trump down into the people who support him. And I'm sure there are people on the left side of the aisle who are just as guilty of just the viewing other people as evil, right? And it's gotten us to a place where it just feels like it's like a powder keg that's just waiting to explode, kind of a feeling. So, yeah, I just kind of had to sob for a while and like grieve that reality, and I'll probably have to go back to that. But I think that was I don't know if I was expecting that either. Just to feel like a weighted grief, and I kind of like throughout the week have just sort of felt more depressed than usual, a little more lower energy. So that's now it's Kara's turn.
I mean, I feel really bogged down, like really heavy from all of it. I feel very similarly to everything you've already talked about, but I think also just feel overwhelmed by it all. I mean, we all have our own lives and things that are hard and things that stress us out and things that we're trying to achieve and accomplish and survive, and it just makes it like that much heavier. I just feel just weighted down. Yeah, just kind of sad. I mean, it's hard to watch people like Donald Trump and his cohorts just sort of act so brazen and so unfeeling and non-empathetic, and yeah, just treat people like absolute trash. To be so vindictive, to be ignorant on so many issues. I, you know, a lot of people of faith seem to align themselves with him, and I just can't for the life of me understand how you can align yourself with him, because he doesn't embrace any of the attributes of Christ, I don't think. I have not seen it. He's literally just supporting a platform that he thinks he's going to get him the votes, which it did. That's just my view. I think I'm just of the mindset live and let live. I mean, Amanda, you know, I think life is hard anyway, just in general, from a baseline. I tend to see things more negatively than you do, in general. But you know, I've never seen anyone change by exclusion or by excluding them. I've never seen anyone change by being told they're awful and they're wrong. And I realize that people hold certain beliefs, as do I, of what they think is right and wrong. And that's normal. That's human nature. It is what it is. What I think we can all agree upon on some level is that we can abide by the golden rule, you know, of like treating your neighbor with respect and kindness, and it does not seem to be happening. It's as if that's lost, and if it's not adhered to, we lose all ability to communicate and to live in a civilized society, and I think that's where we're at, and I think that's what's so demoralizing and so sad.
Right.
That's how I feel. I think demoralized. And I've dealt with this sort of behavior in my past, so it just feels like revisiting behavior that makes me furious and angry and sad and full of grief and all those things that you already mentioned. On top of like just trying to get through the normal day to day, which can be hard in and of itself. Yeah. And you and I both have talked about our faith and our how we embrace it and what we think, and I think it's probably normal for people to go through faith shifts where you assess things and sort of see how you view things and see if things align with your values and things like that. And I think it's just hard to see some people, not all, some people within our faith behave the way they've been behaving, I guess. Yeah. That's how I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, I think a lot of my anger, I feel towards the people the Christians who voted for Donald Trump. I feel a lot of anger. Because
I don't want to, but I feel it too. I don't want to.
Well, I mean, I think I feel anger because a lot of Christianity right now is very judgmental, right? So they judge harshly anybody who's LGBTQ, right? Very harshly. And then they seemingly don't want to talk about racial inequality or racism.
Yeah.
Or other faiths. They don't want to talk about sexism or sexual abuse within church bodies like the Southern Baptist Convention or the Catholic Church. Huge issues, massive issues, right? And they like to sweep those things under the rug all the time. And they like to use excuses, and they like to use basically things that are spiritually traumatic for their members to gaslight them and think, oh, we can't talk about this because this makes God look bad. I'm like, no, this just makes you look bad. Right? Okay. So you have all of,
Well, in all fairness, I do think some people see it.
of course, but
Some
I
people
think
see it, and some people can accept it on some level, but then it becomes like, oh, it's just this one person. It's not this epidemic within.
right,
It's like, oh, that's just an anomaly, which I don't believe it is.
right. Yeah. And I think also just some of the core teachings of Christianity, those very things are seen as socialism or seen as a woke Jesus, like the Jesus who
Yeah.
said, love your enemies, the Jesus who said, turn the other cheek, the Jesus who said, blessed are the poor, blessed are the meek, blessed are the peacemakers. And the bishop who spoke recently from DC who challenged Donald Trump and said, remember to be merciful to these people, to human beings, because that's like a heart, like a bedrock foundational idea of Christianity. And there's
And a lot of religions, but yeah.
yeah, but like the reason I'm
But
focusing on
Christianity,
it
yep, I know.
is because if American Christians would not have voted for Donald Trump, he would not be in the presidency right now, right? But they did.
Yeah.
And you have to, there's a lot there. There's a lot to sit there and examine. Something that you mentioned, I read a opinion today in the New York Times by David French. Since I'm going to talk about it, I'll just get the it's entitled "How a German Thinker Explains MAGA Morality," and it's from today, January 26th. He talks a little bit about this concept of the friend-enemy dynamic, or the friend-enemy distinction. That's how he refers to it. And strangely, he pulls this from a book by a Nazi political theorist whose name was Carl Schmitt. And Carl Schmitt basically talks about how you have to have this in order for the political party to survive. You have to have this concept in place for this Nazi system to survive, where you have an us versus them mentality, a friend versus enemy distinction. And unfortunately, in Christianity, that has a place as well, an us versus them, an evil versus good. And we're good, so they must be evil, right? There's this othering that's constantly happening in a lot of American churches. And so that's, that basically the message of Jesus, to love your enemy, to treat other people well who are treating you poorly, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, to model this different type of behavior. That's following Jesus. I don't know how you avoid that. Those are the literal, like the red letter portions of scripture where God himself came to earth and this is what he's saying. But we don't want to listen to that because that doesn't fit our political motives. That doesn't fit what we want to see. What Christians want to see. They want to see power, they want to be in control, and they want money. I think that's the heart of it.
Not all of them.
No, but
For the
think about the people who did vote for Donald Trump. What are the things that they want?
well, I think
They
a lot
want to
of
get
them
rid of
have
immigrants.
social issues.
Yeah. They want to get rid of immigrants. They
Fixed
want to
so they can
eliminate
feel
abortion.
comfortable. Yeah.
And they want to get rid of the gay rights, all the gay rights, right? Yeah. But all of those things, except for abortion, we've talked about this before. It's a complicated discussion, but the other ideas there are about oppressing, suppressing, or removing other people, basically, which is not, it's not loving your enemy, that's for sure.
I agree. And I think, it's unfortunate because I think there's another way of what Christianity could be. I'll say it that way.
Yeah. I mean, Christianity...
Perhaps what it's meant to be at its core.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily portraying in this moment.
Right. And in my opinion, Christianity was not supposed to be a physical ruling kingdom on this planet. And there's a large segment of people who think that's the way it should be. That this should be a theocracy, an authoritarian theocracy, basically. Anyway, I found this really interesting. Back to we're not really doing stress management at the moment. We'll get to that.
No.
But I wanted to fill this thought because I found it really interesting from that article I was talking about.
Yeah.
So Carl Schmitt, the political establishment has to survive with that friend enemy reality. But liberal democracies and pluralism, which is what allows a democracy to thrive, cannot abide by that. It can't exist. Like, if you want to maintain your democracy, you have to find a way to live with other people who disagree with you and do it in a civil way. So, like civil society. But if you want to adhere to this other method, everything breaks down. And you have things like the Nazi regime. You have really terrible things happening. So, I found this really interesting. In this article, he talks about the founding fathers, Madison, James Madison. He also mentions John Adams, and he also mentions Benjamin Franklin. And he says, so Madison wrote in Federalist number 51, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. So it's basically outlining that, like, if we were all angels, we wouldn't need anything because we would just treat each other respectfully. But government is there to try to make it work because we're not angels. And he goes on to say, ambition must be made to counteract ambition. So there was this concept of checks and balances within the government itself.
Right.
And then John Adams writes, we have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. So the founding fathers, they had this idea that people would be honorable, that people would be virtuous. And if they were not, the Constitution could be broken like a whale through a net. And then the other idea he talks about really quickly, let's see if I can find it. Benjamin Franklin, David French writes that Benjamin Franklin's idea of like what's virtue, he listed it as temperance, silence, order, resolution, frugality, industry, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, tranquility, chastity, humility as indispensable elements of virtue. And so I don't think I read anything in there. I'm trying to be nice. Maybe industry. That in any way applies to Donald Trump. He is not humble. There's no chastity. He's not tranquil. I don't see moderation. I don't see justice. You could say he's sincere about being awful. He's awfully sincere. He's not silent. Yeah. So anyway, we're dealing with something in our society right now that our founding fathers said, if you have this lack of virtue, if you have avarice, if you have ambition or revenge, the Constitution can break apart. And so I feel like this helped me understand a little bit from an intellectual standpoint. Also, like we've been talking a little bit about a spiritual standpoint. Of how this could unravel itself.
Donald Trump's the whale.
Yeah. Basically, Donald Trump is the whale. Yeah.
To break through the netting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard from a couple people this week, even like, oh, they didn't think he would be so extreme with these things he promised to do. And they're like, and people are upset now. The police unions are upset that he pardoned all the insurrectionists. Like, there's an example. But I think people are like, oh, whoa. And I think they're... I'm actually just kind of tired of hearing that. Oh, I don't think he's going to be that extreme. Oh, I don't think he's going to do that, this or that. And then he's just like leveling everything with executive orders, unconstitutional or not.
Right. And it's, I was thinking the difference between the last presidency and now, like I said earlier, was that the people who he has surrounded himself with are yes men. They're people who either believe his ideology completely, like him, or scared of him. Yes, they're just going to do whatever he wants. And versus the last time, you actually had some people. They kept getting fired, but there were some people who refused to do some of his worst, through with his worst inclinations.
You and I talked about like one of the executive orders I can't understand is the one about the health agencies. In what way does that benefit anyone?
Right.
Like, how does it benefit him? Is it just because so he gets sole say and power over something he has no clue about? I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I mean, it reminds me of when he was talking about, making a bleach solution that we could drink so we could cure COVID or not be infected by it. I'm like, oh my God.
Or put sunlight in our veins. Yeah.
Oh, I was just kidding.
Just a
What? Are you
joke.
really kidding? I watched that. I watched that happen.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
It's nuts. Okay, so I'll try to bring us back a little bit to
Oh, while we're here.
well, you can keep talking if you want. Did it?
No, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I know. So we were thinking the first thing we would start off with talking about is just the concept of grief and crying and how that can be important and helpful. Um, yeah, so letting yourself cry. This is before we get into something more serious. I'm going to share a story. When I was younger, I'm an only child, and I was very close to my parents. I'm still very close to my family, actually. But I had never been away from home. I was 16 for a long period of time. And I was going away for 8 weeks to my first music camp. And it was hard for me. I missed my family. I missed being home. And I didn't know anybody. And I set aside a time to cry every day for 6 weeks of the 8 weeks. I would just be like, it's my cry time. I'm just going to go cry. Cry
Wow.
for 15 minutes. Be like, okay. Then I go practice. Yeah, I did that for 6 weeks. And then I developed great friendships. I was starting to have a good time. And then I was like, I could be here for longer. And then I had 2 weeks and it was the best 2 weeks ever.
I thought you were going to talk about that song you sang when you were like 4. That's what I thought you were going to talk about, which we still sing.
Yeah. So when
To be funny.
yeah,
Well, we sing it to be funny.
we
But
do. So I learned this song in elementary school music class. It's okay to cry. Crying makes us feel all better. Kara didn't want me to sing it, but here we are, and it happened.
no, it was good. I think
Yeah.
it's appropriate. I
Yeah.
like it.
Well,
It's true.
it is true. Okay, so I'll just
I
say,
can't always. It doesn't always help me the same way it helps you, but but I do EMDR, and that helps me get my emotion out,
you
which
cry that way.
sometimes can manifest as tears. Yeah,
Right.
can manifest as lots of different things. But
Right. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I don't always need to cry, but
yeah,
I've always found
sometimes
it
you need to
therapeutic.
scream.
You what?
Sometimes you need to scream.
I've done that before.
Yeah, we all have.
Yeah.
Can't leave those emotions inside.
That's right.
Definitely.
I think that's kind of what we're
Definitely.
getting at.
Yeah.
So crying is sort of a way of releasing some of those feelings, especially something like grief.
Yeah.
And so I was going to focus on a couple different, two different articles really fast. I was just going to I'm not going to read from them. I'm just going to paraphrase them. The first one comes from the Smithsonian magazine. And this is just actually, I'm going to do this one last. I'm going to skip down to the first one. The first one is from the Harvard Health blog. And the question is crying good for you? It's from March 1st, 2021. And they describe crying as an important safety valve because keeping difficult feelings inside can be bad for our health.
Yeah.
And so they
Think
talk
about
about,
people who snap, people whose emotions build up and build up and build up, because we know anger masks grief.
right,
So if someone's particularly irritable or like angry, you got to figure they got a lot of sadness under there.
right. Yeah. And it's important to get down to that base layer of that and to feel
Yeah.
those things because you could process through the anger. You can kind of see
Yep.
this
Figured
is
out.
why I'm so angry. I have trauma, I have hurt, I have grief, I have,
Injustice, whatever it is.
yeah,
causing it.
whatever it is. And so with crying, we wanted to, so this article talks about there being 3 types of tears. There's the, well, I won't say it, one, to lubricate the eye, whatever. But let's say we're going to the emotional crying part. Let's see. When you cry, research shows that you release oxytocin and, let's see, endorphins, and those are very positive things. Tears can be kind of like a natural painkiller because of this release of these positive emotions. So there's a chemical response that happens in the body as well. Let's see. The best way to handle difficult feelings, this is from this article, including sadness and grief, is to embrace them. It is important to allow yourself to cry if you feel like it. Make sure to take the time and find a safe place a safe space to cry if you need to. Many people associate crying during grief with depression when it can actually be a sign of healing. This also talks about men teaching boys and young men that it's okay to cry may reduce negative health behaviors and help them have fuller lives. And this obviously says if it becomes uncontrollable or you're having mental health issues, they want you to see obviously a health professional to seek
Right.
treatment. So, yeah. Okay, so the other article was actually interesting in that it was called Art Meets Science. And so a photographer actually took pictures of the different types of tears and they
That is
actually
cool.
looked
That is
differently.
cool.
Yeah. So if you want to see kind of pictures of different types of tears, and that chemical makeup of the tears changes according to what type of tears they are. If they're from
We're talking about emotion you're experiencing,
right,
right?
yeah. So if
Like
they're
grief,
tears of
joy.
joy, they look different, or tears of sadness, they actually look physically different under a microscope. So that's kind of interesting if you want to read that. That article is called "The
Cool.
Microscopic Structures of Dried Human Tears." The photographer was Rosalind Fisher, and that's from November 19th, 2013, in the Smithsonian Magazine. Okay, so those are a little bit about kind of crying because that's what I did this week and it felt good. I still feel heavy, but I released some of that. I just needed it to come out.
You
Like it
feel a
was
little
just like
better.
I needed to feel it. I needed to grieve like the terrible things I'm seeing. I needed to grieve like the fact that Christians aren't the people I thought they were so many times. That's like I was taught this in Sunday school and I'm
Yeah.
not seeing that right now.
And we should say by and large, because there are some
Of course.
that do represent this, yes.
Yes, of course.
And that's our hope. That's our
Yeah, and it's
goal.
easy. Like it's an alluring, seductive thing to like I feel like for Christians to get on the Trump train because they're like oh, because a lot of Christians associate success with like blessing from God or like money as a blessing from God. And so, it's like easy to get on that train and they'd be like, "Oh, he's going to do all these amazing things like for God." And
We're like, yeah,
and the rest of us
living
are
a
like,
certain way, embracing certain things, being, I disagree. I'm of the mindset, like I said, live and let live. I don't think that someone else's behavior is going to reflect on their lives like they think that it does because they think they're somehow condoning it. If society allows it, they're condoning it.
right,
I'm like, no, that's another person having free will. That's another person living their life.
right. And also like think about the other types of government that have suppressed people or like hidden them away or thrown them into camps per se. You know, in Nazi Germany, you would have, anybody who wasn't for the regime or who was different than what should have been gay people, Jewish people, any type of political dissident, teachers, scientists, whatever. Bye bye.
And I also think I think it does get lost in the eyes of some that people who are different from said Christians, they also can have lives of faith. They can also be journeying with God. They can also be doing all these things. It might just not look like what you think it should look like, and it might not look like your journey.
Right.
But I think it's unfair to just lump everyone in and say, well, they're godless, they're, etc.
Right. I agree with you. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
It's
that's really,
disheartening.
really unfair and also really dangerous. That's not, if a Christian is saying, their evangelism, is important to them, then that's really destructive.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time when Christians behave the way I've seen online or
Pushes
felt in
people like
person, I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that. That's
it pushes
terrible.
people farther away, which I think is like anti what they're wanting.
Right.
Or, I would hope.
Yeah.
I can't speak for people, but
I tell you what. Tell you what. Okay.
I think it's at the root of it. We talk about feeling angry about all this, but I think at the heart of it, we're saddened by it.
Oh,
We're we're,
yeah.
we're hurt by it.
Yes.
It's grief.
It is grief. I've felt that
It's
for a long time.
it's grief. It's not, you know, we we hate you. You're wrong. It's we're hurt by you.
Yeah, you're hurting
That sort of
us.
thing. Or you're hurting whomever we're talking about in that moment. Yeah.
Right. I agree. 100%. I think that's why I get angry because I've been hurt by people. Honestly,
Vicious cycle.
it is. I mean, that's where my
Yeah.
intense anger comes,
Of course,
you know, when I
'cause it's
have it
fear.
towards evangelical Christianity.
Pain.
Because,
Yeah,
like, you have hurt me.
it's pain.
And then you turn around and judge me and everybody else. And you don't
Yeah.
see the big old plank in your own eye.
And at the root of it, it's incredibly painful.
Yes, it's very
And
painful.
um, I wondered, per our notes, were you going to talk about Richard Rohr's new book before we
Oh,
move on beyond him?
yeah. So anybody, you know, we obviously talk a lot about faith stuff. And I'm sorry if you are an atheist.
Their own.
You what?
I said to each their own.
To each their own. And so,
Everyone comes from different places in life, and
yeah. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out. I just tried to describe my faith journey to somebody the other day, and I was like, I'm sort of like, I don't know, in my mind, I have this picture of in the West somewhere, like maybe like Arizona, you know, where these the big like the big mountain structures you see, or maybe like Utah or wherever, and
it's
they're just
beautiful.
the mountainous structures that kind of come up. I forget what those are called, like butts or plains or who knows something, and they
I'm
pop
not
up out of the
exactly
ground.
sure
But then
what
there's
you're
just
talking
flat.
about.
Then there's just like
What?
flat sand. What?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Not mountains. Not mountains.
Well, no, that sort of like, you know, like the Grand Canyon, but there's like one segment that just like pops out of the ground, and then there's nothing else for a little while.
Is
It's just
that
like this rock
is that a
formation.
plateau? No, I don't know what those are
Eh,
called.
maybe. I don't know. I should have went. Anyway, I should probably come up with whatever in my head is happening so I can give it a proper name. Okay, so
Mountain
like there's one
butts.
of those, and then there's just like miles and miles and miles of flat like dust
Okay.
everywhere. And like far, far, far away, there's like a little encampment somewhere with
Okay.
tents. And that's like Christianity, is where the
What'd
tents
you
are.
call it? With
Tents,
tents. Okay.
encampments. Yeah, there's like something over there. But I'm like way out, near that butt. Near the rock formation that's popping
And
out of
what are
the
you
ground.
doing?
And I'm just hanging out. I've got like a little knapsack, you know, and I'm walking around. I'm caravanning. I can't be close. I'm not
Near the
close.
butt.
I'm all the way on the outskirts somewhere walking around, you know.
Near the butt.
Those people are all the way over there. I can still see. Like I see you, you know. You're out there. But I am not there. No.
Oh no.
They have hurt me. But I'm somewhere
Yeah.
out here. I'm kind of
Yeah.
wandering around. I'm like a vagabond right now. My faith journey. That's where I am.
A
I'm a
vagabond.
vagabond.
But you're not alone.
I'm
I
roaming.
mean, I feel like you still embrace something.
I do.
It just
Anyway,
doesn't look like what it did before.
that's for sure. So, one person I do like to read, who I think I like his way of things, seeing spiritual things, is Richard Rohr. He's a Franciscan priest who runs this center for
Action and contemplation, I believe
action
it
and
goes.
contemplation. Yeah,
Action and contemplation, I think is how it's.
Center for Action and Contemplation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so he has a new book that's going to come out in March titled The Tears of Things. And this is a little blurb about it. It just says, how do we live compassionately in a time of violence and despair? What can we do with our private disappointments and the anger we feel in such an unjust world? Let's see. In his most personal book yet, Richard Rohr turns to the writings of the Jewish prophets, revealing how some of the lesser read books of the Bible offer us a crucial path forward today. So, anyway, it was related to sort of crying and like trying to process how to live in the world right now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
yeah. All right. Now we were going to move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we're done talking about mountain butts.
Mountain butts are gone. I was
Now
thinking
what?
Butte. I forget what a butt is.
Oh, Butte?
Oh.
Wow. Wow. That's where you got that from?
No.
OMG.
Oh, no.
That was amazing. Oh my God. Okay, cool.
This is Appalachia girl.
Butte. Ah, now I see what you were after.
Yeah. Butte. You say it Butte?
I thought that was how you
That's
said
probably how you say it. Oh my gosh.
it. Look it up.
I should never let go off script. It's always
What?
bad. It's always bad. Yeah, we should look it up. Webster's Dictionary. Let's
God.
see. Butte. How do you say that? Butte. It is a butte. An isolated hill or mountain with steep or precipitous sides, usually having a
See,
smaller summit area than a mesa. Okay, that's what I meant.
this makes more sense to me now.
Not a butt. Oh no.
You were close.
Yeah. It reminds me of that video we watched. It was on like I forget, it was like in Canada or something where they have that the sled competition where people make sleds out of cardboard. And somebody made a
Oh.
butt that actually
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, it was just a butt
Wow.
going down the hill. Okay. Anyway.
That's not related.
It's
No.
not, it just but yeah. I probably do
Well,
have
I guess
ADHD.
it's a type of mountain and a butt.
A butt. A butte. Oh
So
my
it's related.
gosh. I can't I've said so many words wrong on this show. It's embarrassing. It's bad. I've got guillotine now. Now I have butt.
Oh, it made me feel better about my math skills.
You're welcome. I'm here for you. I'm here to help you
Yeah,
feel better about yourself.
appreciate it.
Okay. All right. So this is sort of a meandering podcast. Okay. We're going to talk really quickly about different strategies, like the actual heart of the podcast about
Okay.
dealing with stress. There was let's see. So let me get down to my list here. Stress
Oh, no.
management ideas list. So obviously I did talk about praying and crying and grieving. Another thing is meditation. And some of these things we're actually going to talk about more specifically with experts during the Healing Pathways of Healing podcast series. But for now, we're just going to kind of touch on them. So meditation, box breathing, mindful meditation. There are just resource-wise, there are free resources on YouTube. If you have a subscription to Apple Fitness, there are free meditations offered there. And then there are apps that you could pay for called Calm, which I've used before, and Headspace. And you're learning how to focus your mind, calm your heart rate,
Headspace.
learn self-awareness, and learn body awareness. Then we have exercise, which I have not done well at this entire month, especially this week. Yeah, I was going to say it's because apparently there was like a bug infestation at our gym. And I was going to be
That's
like,
not
that's
why.
why I'm not going to the gym. The reality is
Yeah.
there's a treadmill in our basement and a rowing machine, and there aren't any bed bugs down there.
Nope.
I could
Thank
have,
God.
yeah. So I'm going to try to reflect on this. I'm hoping tomorrow will be my day. I'm going to do it.
Yep.
Ugh. Okay, so I took this blurb about exercise from the Mayo Clinic's Healthy Living and Stress Management section of their website. Basically, it says virtually any form of exercise, from aerobics to yoga, can act as a stress reliever. If you're not an athlete, or even if you're out of shape, you can still make a little exercise go a long way towards stress management. Exercise, it pumps up your feel-good endorphins. It actually reduces the negative effects of stress. It helps your body with stress itself. So you're conditioning your body to be able to handle the bad stuff that kind of happens in our body with stress. And they liken exercise to meditation and motion. And it also has been proven to improve mood. Cara.
Wow.
Just kidding.
Girl, I've worked out for years and it does not, well, it momentarily improves my mood. So,
Okay. Sorry. Sorry, Cara. Love you.
that's
Okay.
genetic. That's genetic mood problem.
Okay. So exercise can make it for lots of reasons. I know I'm getting the evil eye. For those in the podcast,
not
I'm getting
nice.
the evil eye. I'm sorry, Cara. I thought it would be a funny joke, but I guess it's not. This is a
I got a
podcast.
lot. I got a lot going on in my life.
I had to say something because I look pretty bad when I just said butt all the time. Okay. No, I'm just kidding. All right. I did look bad, but I didn't actually do it. I just thought it'd be funny. Anyway, moving on. Oh my God. Healthy food, so healthy eating. This is from Harvard's The Nutrition Source. A healthy diet, a balanced diet can support a healthy immune system and the repair of damaged cells. It provides extra energy to cope with stressful events. Early research suggests that certain foods like Polyunsaturated fats, including omega-3 fats and vegetables, may help regulate cortisol levels. There you go. Then we have time in nature, how that's another great tool for managing stress. There was a study I found from Molecular Psychiatry. This looks like it's volume 28 by Sebastian Aucklenberg. It's called The Positive Effects of Time Spent in Nature on Stress, Considering Climate Change. And so this found that they looked at people's brain activity, whether they were walking for, I want to say it was 20 minutes, in an urban environment versus a more naturey environment. And they found that people in the urban environment didn't have any positive brain activity when it comes to reducing stress, but the people who walked out in nature did. So
That's cool.
I actually...
Have you ever heard
Go
of
ahead.
grounding? Have you ever heard of grounding? Like where you try to ground yourself to the earth, like you walk barefoot.
I like
It's
it.
supposed to have stress relieving.
That sounds good. It does.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the same sort of thing as like I think is like grounding yourself to the floor. Like bring down your stress. Try to get your anxiety down.
Yeah. I
Like
like that.
when we're performing.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about when we're performing.
Yeah.
Performance anxiety. If you can ground yourself, sort of root yourself to the floor, it does make a difference with sort of feeling your body, grounding it.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but actual grounding outside where you like put your feet in dirt and grass and it's supposed to have a sort of the same impact.
Putting your toes in the mud. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I also had an experience the other night. I forget why I tried this. I think it's because I was like feeling stressed. Oh, I know why. I was watching MSNBC and I got super stressed because I was like just watching or reading the news all day, and I was just, my heart rate, my blood pressure was probably like elevated.
Told you not to do that.
Yeah,
Still do it.
I know it was bad. I've been better the past 2 days. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, we were watching TV and I was like, oh, YouTube TV has that Zen channel. So I turned it on and there was that like beautiful Arctic fox just sitting there chilling with some peaceful music. And I felt like everything, my heart rate and my body just suddenly relaxed.
You know, I wonder if that happens for me. Like you know me pretty well or very well, and I don't respond to that. I don't respond as quickly to things like that as you do. Why do you think that is?
I think everybody's different. Everybody's a little different. And
It's like I'm totally desensitized or something. It's like I have to be in stress mode all the time. My brain's always stressed.
well, you've talked about trying out like, coaxing your parasympathetic nervous system to be
Yeah, I'm working on that.
more
Trying
active.
that. Yeah.
That could probably be a stress management tool as well. We didn't put that in here, but
Yeah, and I do that by massaging the part of your ear that people get pierced sometimes if you use both sides of your fingers.
not the lobes, but the other part.
Not the lobes, yeah. And just sort of like run your fingers. It can stimulate the vagus nerve, which can trigger your parasympathetic nervous system into sort of engaging.
Yeah.
But don't overdo it, or you'll have a vagal nerve response. That's uncomfortable.
Oh no.
Done that too, because I overdo everything. So just like a couple seconds a day. Start there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another one. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, we have talked to a therapist. Very important. Karen and I both have, gone to therapy.
Oh, partooked.
Partaken. But
Partook.
I've seen a couple different therapists over my life. Been very helpful for me to go through very
Same.
specific issues, but also
Very
just
serious.
I saw a therapist for years when I lived in Texas, and again here when I moved to St. Louis. It was very helpful. So that's really
Yeah.
helpful. Maybe now during this very stressful time period that we're experiencing. The other thing we wrote down was meeting with like-minded people, and so finding your people, choosing your people. I was watching MSNBC actually, and there was this guy named Dan Harrison who I want to say it's something like 10% happier or something like. He has a podcast, and he said never worry alone, So find your
Oh,
like-minded people that you can, talk through what's happening in the world right now, what's happening in your own life. And
yeah.
and we hope that this podcast helps you feel a little like that. Maybe you feel seen or more, feel understood, feel less alone as well.
Yeah, and I'll also say while we're on that topic, I know it's kind of like counter to what we're talking about in this moment, but I used to be very conservative, and Ben, my ex Ben, he was kind of the opposite, like conservative, but a lot more left leaning than I was, and we got along really well, and we still do, but like it's just, you know, he would sort of challenge me a little bit, and I would challenge back. But over that time, I was just like, I think I haven't thought any of this through, and so I started sort of leaning a little bit the other direction, sort of critically thinking about what I was actually um, embracing.
Yeah. Like,
So
yeah.
I do think a little bit of that is good too,
Yeah, I mean, we're not
as
saying
long as we're
only,
still trusted people. Yeah.
yeah, we're not saying you only should talk to people who
No, I know. I
think
just thought I'd
exactly
mention
like
it.
you. I mean, we wouldn't be able to talk to our families if we thought that we
It'd be
did.
nice to like start to like, yeah, mesh and start to like hear each other out
Right.
at some point. It'd be nice,
Yeah. Yeah.
ideally.
Um, okay. Then we've already touched on this, and we know that I myself am very guilty of not doing this well this week. Limiting social media time and limiting news consumption time.
I've been really good about it.
Kara has, I have not. I have come home like from work and just like sat on the couch and watched the news. Or like in the morning, I'll just read the news. I have two newspapers that I always read every morning, and I don't know, it's been hard. So I read the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. It's been a little rough. But I love
Yeah.
reading the news. But now it's like, ugh, it's much more
Yeah.
painful. We already talked about finding time to cry and grieve. Another one that I wrote down was just journaling. So my best friend Ashley, she was on the show with us 2 episodes ago, and she's a huge journaler. She's done it, I think, the whole time I've known her, so like 25 years. And I know that she, if you follow her
I
Instagram
use,
channel, handle, whatever,
yeah.
account, that would be the proper.
Page. Yeah.
She does every once in a while, like show herself like going to journal in the morning or whatever. But I know that's been very helpful for her to be able to process her emotions, process her feelings and her thoughts, and just getting kind of it all out onto paper. That can be also very useful as well. And then I just wrote down some quick, like, small activities that maybe will help you find little times of joy. Some of these are mine. So, tea time, coffee time, sitting in a hammock when it's not extremely cold out. Haven't been able to do that in a while. Rocking in a chair, your rocking chair, walking your dog, petting your cat, watching your goldfish swim in their tank, painting, listening to music, reading a good book, something like that. Something that helps you feel joy or comfort in some way. And those are all healthy things. So, yeah. Okay, the last thing we wanted to talk about was the concept of action. And this is something that Dan Harris also kind of said. Compassion is empathy plus action, the desire to help, and how action can absorb anxiety. And I saw this quote originally. There's another podcast that we kind of follow each other. It's called United She Stands, and they focus very specifically on political issues. But on their page, they made an Instagram story that had this quote from Joan Baez, Beaz,
Bays? I don't
Baez.
know.
And so she actually was a singer in 1963 at
Bays?
the March on Washington, and she was beside, I guess, Martin Luther King Jr. and they sang "We Shall Overcome Together." So that's kind of her. She was an activist. That's her background, and she said, "Action is the antidote to despair. Action is the antidote to despair." So just a couple ideas we wrote down about action. Supporting organizations that are on the front line of legal battles in our country politically. So organizations like the ACLU, the Human Rights Campaign, supporting national and local news like NPR, the Associated Press, local papers, local radio stations, and reputable national newspapers. And then getting involved in organizations like a local chapter of Indivisible, getting involved working with local Democratic chapters for local and state elections, volunteering at food banks, domestic shelters, animal shelters, working as a tutor, becoming a big brother or big sister, things like that. Also, just starting your own organization to make a difference. So, trying to take action to make the world better, doing everything you can to make the world better so that, that anxiety that we feel, the despair that we so often feel right now, that we are turning it around, and causing our empathy and basically putting it into action to try to make the world better than what we're seeing it right now. Yeah. So we skipped over some other stuff. There was an article up here that I thought I could read just a couple of little ideas. It was from Vox Media. Let me go back up to it. And it was coping strategies for the next few days and the next 4 years by Ali Volpe from November 11th of 2024. And it was basically written with the Trump election in mind. It was, yeah. So a couple months ago, he has won the presidency. So she says, don't suppress your emotions, process them. That's what we talked about. Stay in the moment instead of worrying what's to come, as hard as it may be, ground yourself in the present. So the concept of being more in the present, that's sort of like Eckhart Tolle, right? Isn't he about the power of now?
Yep.
So that's another book you could check out. Staying in the moment. She also talks about avoid fatalistic thinking. I have to say that one's hard sometimes. I always go like worst case scenario. I need to work on that. Curb reactionary impulses. Focus on what you can change. Find or bolster your community efforts. And you've got to live. So things keep going. Life keeps going. The grass is growing. The birds are chirping. We can do this. So these are just ideas, basically. I hope this was a little helpful, or if maybe anything you laughed at me mispronouncing.
I did.
Yeah. I'm here for comic relief, even if it's accidental. So that's kind of the gist for today. We just wanted to basically say, you're not alone. We're seeing the same things. We are not crazy. Right? Not just Cara and I, but collectively our listeners. We're not crazy.
We know somebody. We know somebody. We're not going to name names. But this person would always say in arguments, so-and-so's not crazy. So it'd be like, if I were to say, Cara's not crazy, I'm like, you speak about yourself in the third person. You are, in fact, crazy.
Yeah. But
we're not crazy.
The reason we're bringing
we're
it up,
not crazy.
Yes, right. We're not crazy is because, in many ways we're being gaslit. Like we see what's really happening. We saw January 6th. We see the realities of what's taking place right now. But certain people like Donald Trump are gaslighting us. So, the other thing I wanted to remind us of is that 74.9 million people voted for Kamala Harris.
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. And the vote percentages were 49.8% for Trump and 48.3% for Kamala Harris. So it was very close.
Still very much divided.
Yeah, we're very divided. It was very close, but reflect on the fact that you are not alone. We are here with you, but we were also part of 74.9 million people who voted for Kamala Harris. We're assuming if you're listening to this podcast, you probably voted for her because of the things that we talk about. If you voted for Donald Trump, welcome.
You're probably family or friends.
Yeah, you're probably family friends. You're listening because you love us, even though you think we're crazy liberals.
And we love you too.
And we love you too. Yes. Yeah. If you voted for Donald Trump, listen. We're game for that. That's cool. Okay. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Bye-bye now. Yeah. So next week we probably will do a history podcast. We just need.
No!
I know. We just need one more week. We're gonna get back to the healing.
I might be sick.
Healing. Yeah, Kara's gonna come down with COVID, fake COVID, so she doesn't have to be there.
No.
But anyway, thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate your time. And take care.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.